last day of our medieval dinner party at home series, and today we're going to be cooking up a tasty meal. You are going to need a sharp knife, a chopping board, a saucepan and something to stir with, a white cabbage, a white onion, a leek, some peas, some oats, some thyme and half a litre of vegetable stock. Let's cook. So we're going to be making a really common everyday medieval dish, and that is vegetable pottage. So pottage is a bit like a stew or a soup. You'd chuck in whatever vegetables you had and it would make a really tasty and nutritious lunch. So I'm going to start by chopping an onion. Make sure you get some help with chopping if you need some. So we're going to put in our pottage some leek, onion, cabbage and peas. They're going to be the main things going into our pottage. And actually the ingredients that we've got here would be referred to as peasant food back in medieval times. And that's because all of these things are really easy to grow and they don't cost much money. Now pottage is something that would have been eaten by peasants, by fairly ordinary folk, but it also would have been eaten by richer people too. If you were richer, you would just have a few more extravagant ingredients in your pottage. So you might put in some meat and maybe some nice exotic spices. Back then, not everyone would have been able to afford to eat lots of meat or spices. Certainly spices would have had to travel quite a long way, and so not everybody would be able to afford to eat them. So we've got our onion chopped there. Now we're going to move on to our cabbage. So we just want a few bits of our cabbage. We don't want to put the whole thing in. I'm not making a great job of this, but it doesn't matter too much. There we go. And we're going to chop those as well. So just a rough chop. Don't worry too much about making it look pretty. We're only going to eat it after all. Here we go. Lovely. So actually what we've got going in our pottage are lots of warts. Now warts aren't the same as we might think of warts today. They're not the things that you get on your skin. The warts that we're putting in are medieval warts. And that is a word that they use for herbs, but also things like cabbage and leeks and those types of things. So I'm just chopping up my leek. Again, just a rough chop, doesn't need to be too neat. And then we're going to put these in the pan. So we're going to go for cabbage, onion and leek into our pan, and we're going to add our vegetable stock into that as well. So let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to turn on our cooker to sort of medium heat, and then I'm going to add in my vegetable stock here. So I would use a slightly deeper pan for this, but this way you'll hopefully be able to see what I'm doing. So our vegetable stock is in, and all we're going to do is add in those chopped ingredients that we had earlier. So that's our onion, our cabbage and our leek all going in. And then we're going to give these a good stir around, make sure they're all covered in the water in our stock. Lovely. And then we're going to add in some of our herbs. So we've got some lovely thyme. I love thyme. We grow this in the garden here at the barn. So I'm just going to pick off some of the thyme and add it straight in. So there are lots of things that we have today that we might eat regularly that actually they wouldn't have had back in the medieval times. So things like potatoes, they wouldn't have had any of those. There were no tomatoes, and definitely nothing like crisps or chocolate. So we've got our cabbage, our leek and our onion in with a bit of thyme and our vegetable stock. Now we're going to leave this to simmer for 5 minutes, and then we're going to add in our peas. So set your timer, we're back in 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes has passed and we've got a really lovely looking soup starting to appear there. So now it's time to put in our peas. So I've just actually used frozen peas. Obviously they wouldn't have had freezers, so wouldn't have been keeping frozen peas, but this is a medieval inspired dinner. So I've just used frozen peas because that's easy and it's what I had in the freezer. And I imagine what you might have in your freezer at home as well. So I'm just going to put in a sprinkling of peas, as much as you like. And then we're going to give it a good stir and leave that for another 5 minutes. So set your timers and we'll see you in 5 minutes. So another 5 minutes has passed and our pottage is looking rather good. So I'm just going to try a little bit to make sure that the vegetables are cooked and not too hard. Be careful that you don't burn your mouth when you do this. Well, that is tasting pretty good. That leek is definitely cooked. So I don't know if you can see this, but this pottage is looking still quite runny. It's more like just a broth at the minute, and we want to thicken it up. So what we're going to use to thicken up our mixture are some oats. So I'm going to add in about 4 tablespoons of oats, so just sprinkle them in. And this will help to thicken up our vegetable pottage, and it also adds a bit of protein, a bit of fibre and some carbohydrates to our meal as well, which is really important because if you think about the kind of work that people would have been doing back in medieval times, working out on the land, it would be quite exhausting, hard work, and so you would want something hearty to keep you powered up through the afternoon, because this would be something that would be eaten at lunchtime. So you would have something like bread and ale for your breakfast, pottage for lunch, so you'd have this with some bread, maybe you'd have a bit of fish or something like that if you could get some, and then you would not really eat again for the rest of the day. So this is going to be the main meal that you're having. So keep stirring once you've put the oats in, and it is gradually thickening up. Lovely, so it's starting to get a slightly thicker mixture, so just keep stirring for a couple of minutes and it will be ready. So it's the final day of our medieval dinner party at home series. We've got our outfit, we've got our music ready, we've got our table decorations, we've got our bread that we made yesterday, and finally we've got our pottage. So I think it's time to put all of our elements together for our finale dinner party. I'll see you there.